Hey y'all, I wanted to talk about South of Midnight. Now I know this game came out a hot minute ago, and so I'm a little bit behind the times as a creator giving my thoughts on this game, but I did play it on Game Pass. Note, I played it on cloud streaming, so I did not play the best version of this game, let's say, but I ran well enough on the cloud with a few hiccups here and there that I was able to play my way all the way through it to give my overall thoughts and review of this game. This game I really enjoyed playing. It was a fun 3D action platformy sort of game. It wasn't too challenging, and it was really cool to be in that world and environment. And I think that's where the game shines. It really shines in the art style and the environments and the music. That's really the best parts about playing it through this game. Going through as you're going to a next boss area and having a song play in the background of either the boss singing or something about them. It's really cool, even just listening to the beats of that Southern root style as you're just going through these marshes and forests. You know, this isn't like a beautiful skyscraper or a beautiful foresty looking game. Everything's kind of muddy, a little bit gross and run down. There's been this big giant flood, so everything's just kind of destroyed. So it's not like the prettiest looking game, but the game looks really good. And just to experience these variety of environments, as somebody who sort of kind of grew up in the South, it felt a little bit like a familiar territory where I've been to some of these sort of similar spots and places. It reminds me of where I grew up a little bit, kind of what like Fallout 3 did for me in a way. So that was really cool. And the platforming I felt was pretty good. Usually I'm not the best at platformers, but for the most part, I got through it without too many hurdles. Every once in a while, I'd mistime a jump on like a thorn plant or something, get hit, and I got frustrated with it. But overall, I felt like I was constantly moving and going without too much of a hassle. Having said that though, sometimes you'll get control of this other character called Crouton that you get partway through the game. This character you can use to help attack enemies, but also get into these tiny spaces where Hazel can't quite get through. And every once in a while, some of those segments would get a little frustrating and annoying because you could take so many hits and you would have to basically restart over, and the character doesn't really jump per se. I would get a little frustrated, so if I turned the corner a certain way or just like mistime something, I would get hit and I'd get hit again, and that was it. So that was like the most frustrating part of the platforming. I didn't love playing Crouton necessarily in those segments, but I liked having Crouton around and using Crouton in battles. So for the gameplay, you have these kind of weapons that you can use to attack enemies with, and you have abilities that you gain. So the cool part about the game is that I was able to mostly upgrade everything. There was a couple little upgrades I didn't get to by the time I got to the end, but if you go around exploring enough, you find mostly of what you need. You use these things called floofs, and they're scattered around the world, but you also get them when you're killing enemies, and that's what upgrades you. Some of the abilities are locked by level progression per se, where even if you have enough floofs to unlock it, you still can't unlock it until you get past a certain point. But by the end, you'll have the ability to kind of choose and unlock all the abilities that you want. There's a variety of abilities. One that allows you to freeze an enemy so you can attack it. Another one allows you to take control of another enemy using Crouton. Another one is kind of a force push and a force pull. So there's a way for you to be constantly moving around. It's a game to where you're not really meant to stay still for too long. You're just constantly moving and going. Even with the boss fights, they all involved you kind of jumping and maneuvering around at some point and just constantly going, with the exception of one that I could think of is a little bit different. But it was fun to play. You know, some people criticize like the combat's not the best in the world, and I can see that. It's not the best in the world, but I did like the fact that the game provided so many difficulty options, and I picked one of the easier ones just to help me get through a little faster. And it was fun to play in that sense. It was more about like getting through the fight to get to the next beat than it was about the actual gameplay, which is kind of like the opposite of what you would normally want it to be. As a story person, I was like, let's go, let's get through it. And I had fun with these little battles here and there. The boss fights were interesting. I would say they're not the most unique boss fights I've encountered. It's like kind of a mishmash of random bosses I've fought in other games before, kind of thrown together, and it's serviceable. It's not like the greatest, but they were all unique and different in their own way. I really like the looks of the bosses too. Again, back to the art style and the character design. I thought all of them were really cool. The story itself was interesting. I kind of liked the idea of the world they were setting up about these weavers and these powers and letting you be able to see things, and you get to learn more about Hazel and her mom. The game kind of starts with you trying to find your mom that goes missing during this flood storm, and then you realize there's a lot more than meets the eye in terms of her mom. And even though the characters that Hazel kind of knew about or knows, and finding more about their backstory, and Hazel realizing that her whole world is way bigger than she expected. I will say my biggest negative about this game is the length. At least for me personally, the game is, I think, 14 chapters, like a Yakuza length sort of style. I felt like it could have maybe even been done in 10 chapters, or like no longer than 12. It felt like towards the last third of the game, that first beginning portion, there was a whole area or two where I felt like we could have skipped this and got to the same place that we ended up at the end. I felt like some of it was just kind of thrown in there to extend the game length. That's like where my gripe comes in. I wish the game would have been shorter. I felt like I would have still had just the same amount of fun and good time enjoying the story and the world the same if we trimmed it down a little bit. Sometimes games can be too long, and it's weird to say when we have these hundreds of hour games that this game, which took like, I don't know, maybe like 7 or 8 hours, is too long. It's kind of a weird thing to say, but it's true. It just like the feel in the moment, a game where it's constantly moving and flowing, that then kind of like hold steady and hiccup a little bit towards the end. It's just unfortunate the way it turned out, but you know, it's not the end of the world. I still finished it. I'm glad I played the game all the way through. I like that her look changed throughout as well. Although I wish there was more of an ability to switch like her character look at any time you wanted. So if they ever do a sequel, I would like to have that, because she had really cool looks and styles as like the main character, but you kind of just changed depending on the moment in the story, and there was no way to really like swap your look per se. So I could see where they could go for a potential future in this. I wouldn't be super stoked to like jump back in necessarily, but if they made another one, I definitely would want to try it. It's not the best game in the world I've played, but it's definitely a good game for sure. And I think just to explore the scene environment, it's worth your time playing it, especially if you like 3D platform games. It's not too long to get through. And as far as searching for unique items, there's not a lot to search for, and it is pretty linear. So you can kind of get through experience pretty quickly. And I think it is worth going through that just to experience something new and different and give you more of a taste of what it's like growing up in the South, especially if you're not from these types of areas. It's definitely a great insight to it. You can tell developers really did their research on everything and all the little details and all that. And hopefully this leads to more games of its type, or, you know, gives people inspiration to explore more of their scenery and where they've grown up.